Well, hello and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. Who else? Well, it's actually renamed A&E, the Accident and Emergency, or Andrew and Errol Show, because my delightful guest, as always, is Errol Musk down in South Africa. How are you doing, Errol?
I'm good, thank you. Very
Amazing.
good.
I mean, it's
Thanks
lovely
for
to
having
see
me.
you on so many platforms. The feedback has been tremendous. And not only that, your prediction of Starmageddon and the people having enough, well, it seems to have come to fruition. There's a new petition demanding a new election. And as we speak, about 2 million Britons have signed this petition demanding a general election, saying that Keir Starmer has broken all his promises. What do you make of it?
Well, before when this started, if you've got a little bit of experience in life, you know that you can see a situation that's not tenable, and so that's why maybe a month ago or maybe even longer, I looked at this. I thought, well, this is not going to work in England. Now, you might get it to work in some sort of Eastern Bloc country or something for a while, but it's not going to work in England. This is the last place on earth where this kind of thing's going to work. And, and I actually said, if British people don't do something about it, then they are complicit, in this type of system. And that's just so unlikely. So what has happened is it's just no longer conjecture. It's now obvious that, this petition would probably go to 10 million, and I don't think you can ignore 10 million signatures. You simply can't. And, so what's happening is obvious. I mean, if anybody was asking for it, I mean, they've been asking for it. They've been begging for this, you know.
You make a very interesting. I mean, it's the fastest, basically, petition to hit the threshold. It surpassed 100,000 signatures within hours, and 120,000 signatures were added in a single hour. There's been a lot of criticism of Starmer, including things like obviously the winter fuel payments and so on and so forth. For pensioners, he's slashed those. There's the big row with farmers, the drama about Starmer, the farmer harmer. And inheritance tax, and also this whole thing about free speech. And basically what can happen is once you've got the relevant signatures, if you get 10,000, it means that they'll consider it. If you get 100,000, there's the possibility that it could be debated in Parliament. The real problem is this, though, Errol, is that even though there's this massive surge of opinion saying that we want to have a general election, there's no obligation, obviously, on the government to do that. What's your advice to the government?
Well, let's take a simple example of, let's say, a marriage or something, and the one partner decides they want to be out of the marriage, and the other partner says, well, I don't have to do this. I'm just sticking in the marriage. Well, you know where that's going to wind up. It's not going to happen. There's going to be a divorce. So, it's just, it takes time for them to appreciate where they stand. And, there's no doubt about it. This can't go on. Not in England. I mean, you have a situation where there's no way that they can talk to the new American administration without, I would not be able to shake their hands after I'd been told, after they'd said the things say about me that they said about people in the Trump administration. And so, how can you do that? You can't do that. There's a certain thing in humanity called honor, and you have to have honor. If you don't have honor, you have nothing. And so what's going to happen is they'll probably hold out, and their petition will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually the whole situation will become unworkable. And then they have to have an election, or at least a referendum, But I would think better to have an election, because this whole thing is a mistake.
Yeah, I think make a very interesting point. I mean, and as I say, what they have, whilst this is all about democratic rights, if you like, and that whenever there's a petition, anything over 10,000 signatures, as they say, requires a government response, and those exceeding 100,000, which this clearly does, may be debated in Parliament, although that's not guaranteed. Now, the person who organised it was a chap called Michael Westwood, and he says that Labour broke the key promises before the last election. Obviously, Elon himself has been commenting. He's had this whole battle, if you like, the feud between him and Keir Starmer, not least about his comments on the riot. What's the current relationship like between Starmer and Elon?
Well, at the moment, Elon has too much to worry about than to be worrying about a foreign government, really, which is what the UK amounts to. There are other things besides that to be considered. They've got, all the new fake news being blasted out against every nomination that Trump makes and so on, and so they're dealing with that. And I would imagine they would keep an eye on the side of what might be happening in England, but I can't see them having any particular concern. I think Elon at the moment would look at this and say, well, I can see what's happening. It's a done thing. So just leave it. It's a done thing. And, so coming back to this, I can't for the life of me see how they can continue with the type of policies that they are talking about. They can't. It just doesn't work in England. You could try it anywhere, but you can't do it in England.
Yeah. You make an interesting point. And Elon is, we often discuss Elon's tremendous influence, not just in the US, but around the world. I mean, he's brilliant at his posts on X and his glorious sense of humor. He reposted a graph showing Starmer's popularity dropping from +11 to -38. And he commented, "The voice of the people is a great antidote." So from that point of view, civil war is inevitable. All these sort of quotes he said previously about the riots. I think if people don't get a proper reaction from the government, that there's an increased likelihood that the dissent is just going to grow, isn't there?
Well, yes, but at the same time, it's also important to realize that Starmer's people are, after all, English people, and they will know what this is about. They're not, if you were in some sort of weird, let's say, Eastern Bloc previous type of country, where people just get rammed around and pushed around no matter what, like East Germany might have been, then one would say, okay, fine. Well, they don't have to do anything. Starmer can just say, oh, to hell with you, we'll just make more rules and we'll increase the police. And I see that even recently they were talking about the British police as being similar to the Stasi, and in East Germany. But anyway, yeah, so the English people, and they obviously get the message, I mean, at some point, the Anglo-Saxonism is going to come in and say, all right, fine, you've got me, and how can I make things right? And, it's also conceivable that they might say, well, we made a big mistake, release the people that they put in prison. It's terrible putting ordinary people in prison, for almost nothing. In fact, for something that they were entitled to do is crazy. And so Starmer and them could turn around and try and, mend things. I know their argument is that we've got to fix a broken financial system because we don't take in enough money to support this gigantic socialist state and all that sort of stuff, which England has become. And that's true. But at the same time, there are other ways to solve problems like that, and that is to stop all the waste and start to see where the waste is taking place and not figure out, well, we'll just continue with all the waste. We'll just find more money to pay for it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that sort of basis. And obviously, that's what Elon's going to be doing in the States with this wonderful Department of Government Efficiency, the Doge, which I always love because every time I see that sort of thing, it's always Elon's sense of humor screams out with the reference to Doge currency. One of the posts that he tweeted was the sort of the difference, if you like, in language. And he sort of said, truck is in the US, it's a lorry in the UK, fries is chips, diaper is a nappy, elevator is lift, and free speech is jail time. That's the equivalent in English.
That's good.
That's what he had. So a brilliant one from Elon. There it is on that sort of stuff. It looks good.
Yes, I
see. The reality is this. I mean, he who controls the language rules the world. That's what Stalin said. And there has to be this rejection, if you like, of the weaponization of offence. And we have these things called non-crime hate incidents. And basically, these can show up on disclosure and barring checks, the DBS, so it could affect people's employment. The scandalous revelation over the last 3 days is that there's been 13,000 NCIs were recorded last year, including cases against children, doctors, vicars, calling people basically all sorts of things. If you said that somebody smelt like a fish, or you whistled Bob the Builder at them, or those sort of things. You called somebody a Rottweiler. All of these things could be recorded and have been recorded as non-crime hate incidents. What's your take on all of that?
Well, in times gone by, certainly when I was, a young man, let's say, people were very loath to fling out the kind of things that they do these days at each other. I think what's happened is in day-to-day contact, people are still the same. So if you head down to your shops or whatever in your downtown now, you're going to step aside for people as they come in front of you and say, "Pardon me," and you're going to go into a shop and you're going to be as polite as possible, and you might say to somebody will come up to you, "Can I help you, sir?" And you'd say, "Well, thank you very much." And so your interaction in person would be very like it used to be always. There would be no nastiness. Obviously, there's no way you would say to the bloke who came up to you, "Can you help me?" And you say, "What the think I'm standing here for nothing? What is wrong with you?" You wouldn't do that because that's not what we do. You see, that's not what we do. So the interaction between people is still on a good basis. But now what's happened is we've moved away from civilization when it comes to social platforms. So on social platforms, consider going to the shop. If I were an animal, I would go down to the shop, I'd see another person coming along, I'd bite him. You know what I mean? And I'd take his things and I'd bite him and I'd scratch him and punch him and then I'd leave him and I'd take whatever he's got. If I'm an animal, then I'd go down to the shops, I'd smash the doors open or something. I'd smash the door open and I'd go in and see who's got something I want and just go and rip it from them and smash them all on their head. That would be like animals, if you know what I mean. It's not a difficult thing to imagine how animals behave. And we don't do that. So the level of civilization is fantastic. We go down, we pass somebody in the street, we greet, "How are you, sir? How are you today?" They say, "Thank you, how are you?" And so you go on and you go into the shop and you buy something and everything is just so terrific, smooth. It's just so unanimal-like. But now we go to social platforms. On the social platforms, no, you're a flaming piece of this. And, the other time, another place where you see this lack of civilization take place is when people are behind a wheel. So they'll get behind a wheel in a car and some person will just brake in front of them a little too sharply. And then the person, me, driving, would say, "You whipping mutt, you piece of, I'm going to kill you." Do you understand what I mean? And then it's so irrational. And then as they pull off, you're waving your fist out the window, "I'm coming for you." That's like complete animal, That's if you're behind a wheel. So now you come to the social platforms and you have the same thing. They feel they can do this. They can behave like animals on a social platform and say things that are terrible, which you wouldn't never have done before. And people don't even hesitate to say F-U-C-K on things. That would have just unheard of in my youth, let's say. So civilization has lost itself on the social platforms. And in that respect, I think the government trying to stop it or not necessarily just the government, you might even have it from the churches or something, where they try to stop people from behaving like that and say it's wrong. You're going to get fined now if you wave your fist at somebody out of your car, which makes sense in a way. Except you can take it too far, you see.
Yeah, and I think, and that's the problem, isn't it? It is taking it too far because I don't know if you updated all the classics you have, Rodin the Thinkers, you could have another statue made up of the Thought Police right next to it or something, or Descartes. If I think therefore I am. Well, in the UK, I think therefore I am arrested. We could update all of the classics on that sort of basis. The idea originally was to basically stop these things which are motivated by hostility or prejudice based on protected characteristics such as race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. It was originally introduced after the 1999 Macpherson report. And basically what it was to mitigate, this was the idea, is to mitigate the risk of escalation and build trust, ironically, in the police. Well, the reverse has happened because you've had all sorts of crazy things. I'll give you some examples. There was a former police officer called Harry Miller who was investigated because he said that he identified as a fish. And you sort of turn around, that became they said that's an incident. You had children being investigated because they used names like leprechaun or retard and so on and so forth. And I mentioned about Bob the Builder. One of the most alarming ones, Errol, was this journalist, Alison Pearson, who we spoke about last time. She was a journalist, great journalist at the Telegraph. And she was investigated. She got a knock on the door from the police on Remembrance Sunday. And they went in and they said that this was to do with a tweet that you made about a year ago. They couldn't tell her which one. And she got all sorts of things, so much, she was so distressed, she got an asthma attack.
Well, yes. Look, I mean, what I was saying earlier just now is that it makes sense that there should be, to try and stop this lack of basically civilized behavior on social platforms, that it makes sense if I were in a position of authority where I'd school or where I'd university or where I'd in a community, that the people who are sort of chosen to be in charge at the time should start putting limits on what people can do. So I kind of understand why they are saying sort of trying to punish people for this kind of thing, just put an end to it. The trouble is that it's like in the one goes back to the Nazi era, and they show you stories on the war and prior to the war, and they show you a young man who was completely normal, and he was and he was taken into the military or the police in Germany, and then he did terrible things afterwards. And they ask him, well, why did you do it? He said, I don't know. I was just told that's what I've got to do. And so at the end of the day, you make these rules, and then they get passed down to these people who have to enforce them. And they're not that bright, a lot of them. They're not that sort of astute. And so they take it to heart. Get rid of these people who are saying this kind of thing, or rather stop these people from saying these things becomes get rid of them to them, and or ultimately go and throw them in the box and throw the box away. It becomes at that level they're not able to. I wouldn't say they're stupid or something, but unfortunately at that level, like school children, you do what you're told. You see, so that's where the problem comes. To try and temper this kind of thing, if you understand. The way you would do it normally in a community is you would try and make people aware of it by a sort of publication or publicizing it, and trying to encourage people to move away from being nasty to each other, explain to them what they're doing, and people will start moving away from it. But if you start doing what Starmer's done, and you just throw them into prison and take out prisoners and throw them, I mean, that's basically the type of the soldier I was talking about. That was, they asked after the war, why did you kill all those people? He said, well, I don't know. They told me to do it, And so, that's where we're sitting with Starmer, and they haven't got the sort of empathy in their way of operating that is required. And so as a result of that, they're going to lose the government of the country. There's no question about it. I mean, Starmer can't go past February. I said February 2 months ago. He can't go past February. There's no way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And virtually every edition of the A&E show, we talk about Starmageddon and your predictions that he won't survive.
Yeah. No, even me, if you said to me 6 weeks or whatever it was, a month ago, that when I said, look, this can't go on, he's going to have to resign, I was sticking my neck out, And then I saw Elon was saying also he needs to resign. And now everybody's saying he needs to resign. And then I look on all the British TV channels, which are so many now and such good ones like the ones that you often on, and they are saying the same thing. Got to resign. And I mean, I saw that one chap, Clarence Atkinson or something, the white open neck shirt and the black jacket and the black hair. He's on Talk TV. He was very loath to go that far, and then suddenly he took the step. He said, someone's got to resign. And, you could see he was like, oh, my God, They're going to come for me. But
Well, what I love about Errol is not, it's
difficult
not just
step to
Elon who
take.
has the influence. I mean, clearly people are listening, and this is what I love about this platform. We've got an opportunity to voice these concerns before we're shut
Yes.
down, and nobody dares shut us down because we're on more platforms than Paddington between us, so it's all good. I'll tell you what my biggest concern about these non-crime hate incidents is that the record, once you've done it, could remain on your record for 6 years. So
No,
if
that's
you're
right.
looking for employment, it
No,
basically
that's
gets
right.
flagged up. So people doing background checks and things
No,
like that,
that's
and it could
terribly
affect
wrong.
their employment prospects.
That's terribly, terribly wrong. You know, I give you an example. You know, many years ago, my youngest son Kimball was a very, very. My two boys were such good boys. I can't tell you, they were such good boys. But he was 15 and he had a bicycle and he went off one Saturday night with his friends in the city we lived in Pretoria. And he somehow I met some older boys, slightly older, and they were going to some party, and off they went on their bicycles to a party. They got to this party. It turned out to be people more like in the early 20s. And, you know, they were 15, 16. Anyway, they were somehow admitted to this party, and this party turned out to be a skinny dipping thing, and, you know, everybody taking their clothes off and jumping in the pool. And as it happened, Kimball was a avid photographer. I bought him a little Pentax in Hong Kong once, you know, when we were in Hong Kong, and he had it with him. He loved taking pictures, you see, and so he was taking pictures of everything. So then the police arrived, and he was arrested. Kimball was arrested. So the next thing I heard is he's arrested, and he's not only arrested, he has to be bailed out, and and the school has called me that he's been expelled from the school. He's been expelled from the school he's in. So I went to see the school and I said, you know, this is crazy. What are you doing? And they said, no, this is 3 headmasters sitting in front of me. No, he's got to go. He's finished. I said, no, he's just a little boy. He's just a little boy. So they said, no, he's got to go. So I went to the police again, back to the police, and I went to the child abuse unit or something. It's called something like that. And I met this colonel, and he was a very intelligent man. And they deal with child abuse. And I said, my child is being subject to abuse by the school. And I explained to him. He said, come. We got in the car. Oh, wait. He phoned the headmasters, and they said, I'm coming to see you. They said, no, you can't come. You can only come next week. So this colonel said, no. You cancel everything you're doing, and I'm coming right now. So we went to the school. Cut a long story short, when the colonel was finished with them, all 3 headmasters came around to little Kimball, who was sitting there in tears, by the way, and shook his hand, took one of his hands in both of theirs, said, sorry, Kimball, sorry. So I said, no, that it's fine. We accept your apology, and there's no more expulsion, but I don't want anything on the record here. You know what I mean? I don't want anything on the record. I said to Kimball, interestingly, Kimball, if this is like goes on your record, what do you think? I was 41 at the time. And he said to me, Dad, if it goes on the record when I'm 41 and I'm living in America, it'll still be on my record and everybody will know about it. So I said, right. So I said, I want everything taken out. There's nothing to mention of this thing that you've done at the school. And they did it. They did that, thank heavens. So you're quite right when you talk about that kind of thing. Anyway, coming back to Starmer and them, they've got to pull up their socks. And let's give them a chance. Maybe they'll come around. Maybe they'll think of something. Maybe they'll say sorry. The other thing about the English people are incredibly forgiving people, aren't they?
No, absolutely, and I think you're right, and it's the point you were making earlier about guidance, because so often the copper, the policeman who has to go and knock on the door is just being told from above, and there needs to be much clearer, consistent guidance. We've got the Shadow Home Secretary, a guy called Chris Phillip, and he's basically demanding the police focus on serious crimes, not these minor incidents. But they need to give the police very clear things, instructions and policies, because they talk about two-tier care, where you get certain things which are very serious crimes and people don't get investigated for ages and ages and ages, but they're very quick to lock people up for, as I say, these speaking out.
Well, look how easy it is to do that. It's so much easier to go and focus on some harmless individual who said something on a social platform than it is to go into, you know, I don't know, Brixton or Clapham or one of those places and try and sort some gangsters out. That's much harder. So it's much nicer and more pleasant to spend your day, you know, going down to a nice suburban area and pulling somebody out of their house and throwing them in the back of the car. And van and so on. No, that's obvious. So no, let's get back to the thing that there is a possibility that they could turn around and they could say, so look, we made a mistake. We're releasing all these people. That would be a very big first step. Then they would have to, say, okay, we're going to review all these other things. We're going to look more saving money elsewhere than making the pensioners have no heating oil or whatever it is. And as I said just now, the English people, is my experience, are very forgiving people. They're not like other kinds of nations. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. I mean,
no, I'm right.
We've spoken about this before. We're not only forgiving, we have a great sense of humor and things like that. People make mistakes. I think that's important.
Understanding. Yes, and so they could try and do something like that. At the same time, once the new election is announced, which I think is what's going to happen, then they can put themselves up for re-election.
Yeah,
and see what happens.
I think it's an interesting. I suspect, Errol, that because they've got such a comfortable majority at the moment, they're not going to risk that. But the voice of the people is interesting, as I say. With that, and this is going back to Macpherson and why it was introduced in 1999. It was to build trust in the police, and it's completely the opposite at the moment. And you've got people like Lord Austin, who's highlighted poor crime detection rates. He talks about just 2% of rapes and 4% of burglaries result in charges, whilst things like these non-crime hate incidents are absorbing resources. So clearly that's got to be wrong, hasn't it?
Well, it's easier, that type of thing. The second one is easier to deal with. And so they can have a good day, have a fun day, and actually arrest people. No. They should have, Starmer and them should put themselves up for re-election and see what happens. Now, you made a point just now where you said they have this fantastic majority. Look, you can have all the majority in the world. You can be the committee of a yacht club or something, and all the yacht committee members are on your side as the chairman. If the 700, 800 membership is up against you, you got no chance at all. Yeah. You got no chance at all. There's no way you can say, well, the committee's on my side. Forget it. The whole committee's going to go there. The whole lot are going to go. It's as simple as that. And it's only a matter of the workings of it happening, So you can't, my experience is you can't do that kind of thing. You just can't. It's not possible. You can only do it in countries that have not developed, or some sort of heavy-handed sort of place, like North Korea or something, But you can't do it in England. You can't do it. That's the worst possible place to start trying to be a bully or something. It's just not the right place. Yeah. Second place not to do that is in America and probably Canada. You can't do it. These people are too, they're too educated, or whatever you might call, to accept that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it's the point we've discussed beforehand, is that how's this going to affect the relationship, the special relationship with the US? As we say, Elon's always shining a spotlight on Starmer and Starmageddon and the failings of this particular government. What should be done to improve that relationship with Trump coming in just a few weeks' time?
No, I can't see how it's possible. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. The things that they've said, 3 or 4 of the cabinet ministers have said, makes it quite impossible to be at the same table as them. In days gone by, as I said on a previous show, I said, if somebody had said that in a previous era, people would go to the person and say, look, if it's man to man, you would say, listen, I want you outside, and you would say those things again to my face this time. You know what I mean? And nobody would say to the man who's doing that, you can't do that. Everybody step aside and say, oh, that's true. So and everybody would say, come on, you got to go outside with him now. And the bloke who did the bad things will say, well, please help me. And no, you got to go. You said those things. I'll go and say to his face outside and see what happens to you. So these are basics in human life. You can't do it. So for them for Trump and them and his people to go over and sort of shake hands with these people and pretend that it's all, hunky-dory, that's not going to happen. It's not possible. Simply not possible. For the simple reason that the Trump people will realize that these Starmer people are just putting on, So if you say to them, it's all right, they're just going to look at you and say, gee, the Starmer people are going to look and say, oh, what a bunch of idiots. We'll do it again to them as soon as possible. You know what I mean? And then, this thing of Starmer sending people, or they told me on a previous show, he didn't send people, but somehow it came out that he sent 100 people to assist Kamala Harris campaign. How do you deal with that? I mean, you can't deal with that. You can't go and now sit with that person, make policy and enter into agreements. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. If it's possible, I'd like to know how.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think all of these need to be sort of looked at. And even though Trump was forgiving of his running mate, J.D. Vance, who made similar sort of comments.
That's in the club. Wait a minute. That's in the club.
Yeah.
Vance is in Trump's club.
Yeah.
He can do that in the arguments they make towards, say, electing a committee or whatever it might be. He's part of the club. So he's allowed to say things. But they're not part of the club.
Yeah, well, he was very good, as I said beforehand. J.D. Vance was very good because he realised what he did when asked about those 2016 comments. He said, well, the press, the media misrepresented Trump, but I saw him as a brilliant president and I changed my mind. That was a road to Damascus moment. Is that what David Lammy and others have to do?
No. It's far worse than that. The point is that Vance is in that group. Within a group, 10 men land on an island in a, deserted island and they start arguing with each other. But at the end of the day, they got to come to terms because they are, after all, 10 men stuck on an island. And so, that criticism came from outside. You know what I mean? And so people are allowed within their own group during the trying to iron out things. They're allowed to shout at each other, punch each other, challenge each other, It's normal, but not from outside the group, where you have a sort of unfair advantage from outside the group, And as far as J.D. Vance is concerned, he was obviously following the media, as I was. I mean, I was the same. I supported Trump in 2015 simply because he was doing. I followed his career all the years back into the 70s. And he was somebody, as far as I could see, who was like me. So at the time, I hadn't that axe to grind. I just thought it was wonderful to hear that somebody like me is now standing to be the president instead of some lawyer or something. And somebody like Trump, who we view as kind of sensible, not that a lawyer's bad, I'm just saying from our side, a sort of techie is now going to have a chance. And so that was all I was concerned about. I wasn't concerned about anything else at the time. There wasn't anything else to be concerned about. And yet, at the time, Elon said I was evil for supporting Trump. Evil. And so, once again, he saw for himself as time went by that, maybe my dad was not wrong, or maybe I was misled, And I think, obviously, it's the same kind of thing. But again, Elon is in that group. He's in that crowd. And the one thing about being in that crowd is if you, like J.D. Vance, say the things within his crowd about who the possible leader is going to be and everything, it's that same group that can take J.D. Vance, hold him to task for what he said. You see, but the group that you've got here can't hold some outside country's man who, like the people in England, to task. They just have to put up with the slander. You see.
Yeah. And so, it's ironic. I mean, we were talking about the sort of free speech and things like that, but the things that David Lammy said could be classified as a non-crime hate incidents, where the terrible things and the language that you use, applying the same sort of logic. If you call somebody, say they smell like a fish, or you call them a Rottweiler, the things that Lammy said about Trump clearly could be similarly classified.
And the one guy, one other cabinet minister, a white guy, in fact. He said worse things. And that quite silly-looking woman with the red hair said, Trump is a buffoon. I mean, I think he's just a buffoon and worse. You can't do that. How do you? It's like I know of a family that's having trouble. A husband and wife is having trouble, and they're on at each other and calling each other names and everything because they're going through fights. It happens with all relationships. But I'm on the outside and I'm going around saying bad things about one of them to the public. It's not my business. It's not my business to do that, if you understand. It's not my business to say that the man in the case is a this and that and the other. It's not my business, So, no, they put themselves in a very difficult spot. And I can't see how it can play out. I just can't see how it play out. But moving on, I don't know who is going to replace them, because in the country, you've got these groups that are quite, in your country, that are quite, and being an English person and from the English world, I sort of see it as a parent country, you know? So we follow everything that goes on in England, you know, like many others. And, you know, who's going to take over? Because you've got these other groups that all talk quite a lot of sense, you know, Farage and the others, a few of them. But are they up to it? Are they going to work together? Are they prepared to, you know, work as a team? And that's the problem. There you're missing somebody in England right now, like Trump, who could take all those recalcitrant Republicans who all actually part of the same group, but they hate each other, we're told. And there's proof of the things they've done to each other, and they can't get on each other. Now they're supposed to be in the same group. So it took Trump coming along to say to them, listen, you know, get in line, you know, and that's what he did. And that's what he's done for America. He's taken this bunch of people who have more fun or more, I would say fun, but they have more time to argue with each other than they do to fight the opposition. And so what are you going to do in England? You've got to get a group together in a very short time that's going to represent a new type of English government. The old Tories are, I don't know, they seem to follow a sort of very similar recipe each time. When this bloke Rees-Mogg or something comes on, and I watched him sometimes, you know, I mean, he's you think you said, oh, Jesus, you could just put this straight onto Monty Python. You know what I mean? You put this straight onto Monty Python.
Both Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage. Well, both Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage, I share a studio with every now and again on GB News, so it's always a delight to see them. And Nigel's a very close to Trump. He's been over a few times, and
he's probably the best possibility.
Yeah,
he's probably the best option to lead a new, the best option to lead something.
It is.
I would say.
Yeah, you make some fascinating points as always, Errol. And I think just going back to how we started on this particular episode, I think these whole non-crime hate incidents, we do need to show. We need to have much clearer regulations. What they're supposed to be, going back to the McPherson report, they're supposed to be clearly motivated with intentional hostility and a genuine risk of escalation. It's gone way too far, and we need to clamp way back on that sort of stuff, because otherwise it's just going to escalate. And I think that whole thing is going to be an absolute nightmare. But as always, Errol, it's been a delight catching up with you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Okay.
And we look forward to seeing you next time here on the A&E Show. Take care.
Okay.